Welcome to the first official GRYD Draft Show. Got my buddy Mike Guido here. We've been watching some college football here today. Texas, ASU, kind of the stinker. My Ducks getting shredded by Ohio State. Other than that, man, how has your New Year's been?
Great, Ej Savage. It's great to have you with me. Listen, this is something we've been talking about for a long time. The two draft nerds. At least that's what Bryson calls me. He calls me a draft nerd. And
Hey, it's a good title.
We both fall into the same category. But New Year's was good, man. Didn't get too drunk. I'm feeling okay right now.
There you go. My New Year's, man, I watched my sister's kids, so it was kind of lame.
Nice.
I have two kids of my own, but other than that, not too bad. I was just excited to get up and watch some football and have a day off, and I'll be back on tomorrow, and then I get my Friday off again, so should be a good little week. But yeah, 2025 starts off, and now we really get into this draft stuff. It's gonna be it's gonna be a great show tonight. We're talking wide receivers in the 2025 draft. There's quite a few good ones. Not so heavy at the top like last year when you had four studs. Let's just put it straight. But other than that, man, we've got some good players. We're gonna talk about it. Our guy from the GRYD Network also. Bryson Carver, happy New Year's, fellas. Looking forward to this one. Should be a fun show. Shout out to Bryson. We were kind of talking before the show about who we should talk about first. Who's the guy that we want to put the GRYD Network draft show off with and kick it off? And we decided on Jalen Royals, kind of a lower name on a lot of people's list, but he's a player that's he needs some highlight, he needs some shine, and we're gonna be looking at his Boise State game where he had a pretty solid game. In fact, I believe, and let me go here really quick. See what the stats ended up as. 9 receptions, 211 yards, and 2 touchdowns. So quite a good game for Royals. We're going to start it off with him, and let's jump into the film room. All right, we got it loaded up. Boise State film for Jalen Royals, the wide receiver out of Utah State. Go ahead and talk about his strengths while we let this roll.
Yeah, man. Listen, here's the thing about Jalen Royals is that, like, one of the things that you got to realize about him is that, like, he's one of these smaller school kind of guys. Like, Utah State is not a big time, it's not a big time power school, obviously.
Yeah.
But you're talking about a guy that is going to be one of the faster receivers in the league going in, right? I mean, he's going to run somewhere in the mid to high 4.3s somewhere at the combine. He's got really good hands, great vertical production. I mean, I think he translates right away, kind of like as a deep threat. So that's something I think you're going to have to look out for with him. But I just, listen, we'll look at my list in a little bit later on, but Jalen Royals right now, he's my number 10 receiver at the moment, but I think that there's real opportunity for him to kind of skyrocket a little bit higher because I think he just provides a little bit more versatility than what we're originally leading on. I mean, if you really
that's that deep play that you're talking about, just the ability to win. In fact, over this his collegiate career, 7 touchdown catches of 50 plus or yards or more. Yeah. He's a deep threat, but he can also win intermediate, short as well, and you'll see in these clips he is just such a good possession receiver, but also he has some route running ability as well. Decent release, but at the top of his breaks, really good. Go ahead, continue, Mike.
Yeah, no, and it's really important that you bring that up too, because Jalen Royals is not the biggest guy. He's only 6'2", right? So this is a guy that he'll beat you with speed, but he also can high point the football. Like, he's a guy that can actually get to the football. So there's really something, special about that where, like, if he can figure out, and I mean, and you said it, like, he's not a weak route runner or anything like that, but if he can improve in any of those areas, just finesse areas, then Jalen Royals has a really solid career ahead of him. I think he'll be one of those sneaky good receivers where if he gets into the right scheme, he can get into the right system, he's going to be a really highly productive player in the NFL.
Yeah, and let me just go through some of my strengths I had on him. Solid release package, electric speed, ball tracking ability enables him to win vertically with ease. natural hands catcher, fully extends into the catches, doesn't let those balls get into his pads. That's evident throughout this. As you'll see, some of the catches, or some of the balls that he gets, goes off of his hands because he's always trying to catch and high point the ball. Some of those were a little bit high by the quarterback, just not good. I actually did want to highlight some of his blocking in these clips too, because he's a solid blocker for his size. Not the biggest guy in the world, 6 foot. Official measurements 205 pounds, which is actually pretty beefy. But overall, solid blocker. You can use him in the intermediate, short routes, as I said. Shows good strength. I think that sometimes he deals with a little bit of a tendency to let some more physical, handsy DBs get to him a little bit. But overall, I think that he can build on the strength, especially with the frame that he already has, and just learning behind an NFL level wide receiver coach. And, obviously Utah State probably doesn't have the greatest receiver coaches either. So he's going to learn some technique stuff. He's going to learn some things that are tricks of the trade at the next level that's really going to help push him into the next stratosphere as far as what he can be at the NFL level. I think that he translates more to like a Z wide receiver, but he can work as an X. A Z can work a little bit in that slot. They don't do it a lot with what he's asked to do at Utah State, but I liked him a lot in that Z package. That's where I think he fits the best. Can beat man or zone coverages. Really good at finding the soft spots in between the coverages. Excels in the motion game, and you can tell through these clips that whenever they get him in motion and get him coming towards the ball where he can have vision and get the blockers out in front of him, I think he has that ability to make some really big plays as a catcher, yards after the catch situation. I think that he has toughness. He has that ability to break tackles in the open field, and he's kind of, I don't want to call him like Deebo Samuel, because I don't think that he has that same pedigree as far as yards after the catch and breaking tackles, but he has some of that to his game where he can take a ball that's just a simple slant and take it to the house.
I agree. I think one of the things that I think you're going to see a lot out of him when he gets to the NFL immediately is he's going to be used in a lot of option routes, right?
Yeah.
They're going to give him a lot of packages where he has the choice of making his own breaks, figuring out how he can manipulate defenses, especially in the second level. So I think that there's a real opportunity for that. But EJ, I think one of the things that I think we're kind of similarly going towards here is that this is a guy, I think, that he's a guy that'll help you right away, but have decide to do way more, right?
Yeah.
This is one of those guys who's going to be one of those diamond in the rough kind of players. I would be really surprised. Like, he's not going first round, right?
No,
this is the guy that's going to go, like, I think he's lucky.
Late second, third.
I think he's lucky if he goes second, right? You're going to find him third, fourth round at some point, and it's going to be one of those diamond in the rough players, right? He doesn't have elite traits like Ted McMillan or Luther Burden. He doesn't have those kinds of traits. And one of the things that I think you really pointed out, the biggest struggle for him is how he's going to handle physical DBs.
Yeah.
Right? One of those things where if he just gets beat off the line and he gets late on his break, like the progression is just going to move on without him, and he'll get lost at, somewhere in the open field without the ball in his hands. So, that's, I think, the thing that's going to be a developing point for him is, can he kind of out physical what he's done already in college and kind of move that a little bit further in the NFL.
And that's a good point by you, is just the timing of his routes. I think that's why you see a lot of those routes that he just ran right there, where it's the snap, boom, they understand that he's their best weapon. So why don't we make it easy on him though? So like this one, the timing was off. He thought that the quarterback had already moved off of him, so he kind of stopped his route. Those things come with more reps and understanding who your quarterback is, reps with your QB1. But see, just the little routes like that, just getting the timing correctly, because whenever he does have the ball in his hand, he is such a playmaker, point blank. He just, you can see on this deep route how quickly he can, change the game script on its head. So I think that weaknesses is just, I think that he can deal with some of those concentration drops as most playmakers that want to be effective in the yards after catch game do. They have those concentration drops a lot just because they're always trying to make the move before they catch and secure the ball. Right. I think that he shows the willingness to block. I think that he has some good blocking reps. I just don't think that his positioning on blocks and the technique that he uses is effective or as effective as it could be.
Sure.
That stuff's going to come with time, and I just think that he didn't produce against very many top programs playing out of the Mountain West. But
well, here's the thing too. I mean, you got to keep in mind. I mean, towards the last few games of his season this year is where all of his production came from.
Mm-hmm.
All right. I mean, like you're seeing games like on the road against Temple, he had 10 catches for 112 and a touchdown. Right at Boise State, which is the clip that we're looking at right now, is 9 for 211 and 2 touchdowns. Then he had, then he played UNLV and it was 10 for 155 and a touchdown. Against New Mexico at home, it was 11 for 188 and a touchdown. Like it's really that kind of sample size where you're saying, okay, this kid's got something.
Yeah.
Right? We hadn't even heard of Jalen Royals before those games, so this is kind of like you're kind of taking a chance on talent and coaching and seeing if you can mold this kid into what the tape shows that he can be. So I like him. Listen, I think there's more further developed receivers out in the class that I have ranked higher than him, but there's no doubt in my mind that under the right coaching and in the right system, he can be a successful NFL player.
Absolutely. And while you're talking about, who we're going to go off next, let's just pull up your list, your top 10 list. It starts with Tet McMillan, goes on to Luther Burden. I think that the gap between these guys, from Tet, between the three guys under him is pretty wide. I was curious on what you kind of felt with that. Yeah. Go ahead and talk about that if you want to.
Tet McMillan is I think Tet McMillan is pretty much far and away the best receiver in the class. Like there were some conversations early in the draft process whether or not Luther Burden was going to be the guy going into this class, but I just think Tet McMillan kind of separated himself. The size is elite. The size is elite for him, right? 6'5". He is almost as athletic as they come. The problem that you see with Tet really is that he doesn't have elite speed, right?
Yep.
He's 6'5". He runs about a late 4.4, 4.5 40, but his strength is not.
Watch this catch. I want to highlight this catch.
Yeah.
Go ahead. Let's talk.
Yeah. But
I just wanted to make sure people are watching this right here.
Here's the thing, though, is like his hands and his ability to do work by high pointing the football, his ability to be able to bring the ball in while he's in the air. I mean, forget about, catches where he's, simply completing his route, throws that he has to fight for. He's amazing at pulling catches in. Now, I'm not going to be the one that's like, I don't know if I view Tet McMillan as the same level of prospect. And you might disagree. I think I've heard mixed reviews on this, but I don't know that I put him as high as I did Marvin Harrison Jr. and Malik Neighbors last year, but he's a special receiver. I think he's a bona fide number one. He's got like Mike Evans traits for me, like super size, great hands, routes are on point, high points to football, wins 50-50 balls more. Tet McMillan doesn't make 50-50 balls 50-50 balls. He makes it like 75-25 balls. Like it's remarkable. So I'm so impressed by him. A lot of this Mike Evans, Drake London-ish kind of play. I think he's EJ. I don't even think it's close. Like this kid is so. I think he's going to be such a good NFL player. Really,
and one thing that I think that makes him NFL ready today, right now, is his fearlessness over the middle and the ability to adjust on catches, like you mentioned earlier. Let me pull up this ball right here earlier that I wanted to highlight, that where he comes across the middle, the ball is clearly thrown behind him like so badly. This is the ball right here, and you'll see it on the overhead view right here. Look how far back this ball is behind him, and he just snags it with his left hand coming through here. Whoop. Yeah. One-handed. Just makes it easy, man. He has those big mitts. He's 6'5". I mean, fade monster at the worst in the red zone at the next level to start, but just his fearlessness over the middle, the ability to win on crossing routes is just it's his best trait in my opinion. Just whenever you have the ability to stack a 6'5" guy on those deep crossers and then your slot guy underneath on those, let's say like those 7 to heaven routes where there's the double 7 routes, stuff like that is just chef's kiss. It's what the Vikings do so well with Addison and Jefferson. I think that he's in the same cloth as a Jefferson in the fact that he's probably a little bit underrated whenever he's coming into the NFL draft, and we're really going to see what he can be in the NFL.
Yeah.
But man, he's a technician at the release, at the break, fearless over the middle. Pretty good release package, I said. Not the greatest release package, but good enough. Runs deep over to perfection is what I said. Creates substantial separation at the top of routes.
Right.
Runs basically any crosser, drag, slants, deep cross, etc. Those are so good. Sticky, strong, pure, physical hands that extend into the catch away from the body. Strong lower half to break tackles. You can see it whenever he's going over the middle. If you try to just stick your shoulder into him and don't wrap up, he's going to bounce off of it.
Yeah.
Yards after the catchability is good. He has some wiggle shiftiness for being such a big guy.
Right.
Just far and above the wide receiver one in this class, in my opinion. 212, 6'5", 21 years of age. I had the Mike Evans comp too, just because it's easy whenever this guy is so good at getting that volume of catches and being a technician as far as route running at that size. I see a lot of Mike Evans. Obviously, Mike Evans is lofty expectations going in for anybody. I think he's going to have eight 1,000 straight seasons in the NFL after this upcoming Sunday. But man, I just think that he's by far the wide receiver one. I said it really, if there's any weaknesses, doesn't have that elite speed like you mentioned earlier. Sometimes question his effort a little bit on some blocking assignments. And can get loose with the ball in the open field, and that can create some fumbles at the next level. Those are literally the only negatives I have on him. Just such a great prospect. Go ahead.
The reality for him, I think, is the head on his shoulders, right? And it's just he's a wide receiver who's a young kid, right? So generally speaking, I mean, you're going to be looking at a player that, because realistically, if he's going to be a top 5 pick, because I think that's kind of where you and I expect him to kind of land, top 5, top 10 in the draft. I mean, he might fall as the number 2 or 3 overall player for me, but like he'll end up going to a place that likely doesn't have a strong quarterback, right?
Yeah.
So is he going to be okay playing in the NFL, likely as a number 1 option without a great quarterback, or is he going to get frustrated, right? Because he's a kid. Right. So, and I don't know Tech McMillan, the person. I've never heard anything bad about him. I'm not saying I've taken any shots, but I'm just saying, generally speaking, when it comes to wide receivers, especially the stigma when it comes to the position is if you're not getting your touches, you're getting frustrated. Right. Yeah. So is Tech McMillan going to be able to, like, even if he beats his guy in a route and his quarterback misses him in his progression, is he going to be okay with that? Right. Like he kind of needs to be able to put those things aside. Again, there's nothing really suggesting that he would do that. But again, it's like, I've always kind of said it like this, this kind of kid, I think, has the upside of like there are some plays where I watch him, EJ, and I see like Julio Jones, like he's just like, he's that good. I think he's that good of a player.
And here's some of the yards after the catch ability right there. Yeah. And that's what early Julio Jones was exceptional at yards after the catch for his size. So,
right. And Julio Jones was 6'3". I mean, like you're talking about like among the elite, bigger wide receivers that we have in the sport, right? Mike Evans obviously is very comparable because of size and play style and everything like that.
Yeah.
But it's almost like the kid is so good, that even though he doesn't have incredible straight line speed, like he's probably the best deep threat in the whole draft, right? Like he's not beating crazy fast guys off the line, but he's beating him to the football.
Well, I will say not burner deep speed. A lot of people think like deep speed is burners, but you're just saying like, hey, go run a post and win it. I think that he'll have the best chance of winning it against NFL DBs because he can work off the press man. He doesn't have to be in those bunch formations out wide in 3x1 sets. He can just be out there on an island and win alone, go up and just dunk on the DB and win the route. Doesn't have to create that elite separation because he's so good in contested catch.
He's good at contested catch. His hands are phenomenal. I mean, even in that clip that you just saw right there, right?
Yeah.
The like throws behind him, it's a cleat in the ground, pivot, go. Like it's so simple for him.
And that stuff at the top of routes, when you're catching the ball and you make those quick slants or that shows me NFL nuance, because
That's
you understand. Exactly. You understand leverage and where the DB is going to be. The DB is diving in on your inside hip, and he understands that, so he goes back to the outside along the sideline. Just that type of IQ, you can't teach that. Like you said, it's instinct. So
special player.
Yeah, Tet is very, very good. And if I'm the Patriots, I'm number 1 in the draft. I'm looking to trade back. I know the talk of the town is Travis Hunter. Travis Hunter at 1, Travis Hunter at 4. He's the best wide receiver in the draft. If you're playing Hunter at wide receiver and that's his position, I would rather have Tet McMillan.
I agree. Travis Hunter, here, because this is something I think we should address also, right? Because Travis Hunter is the two-way sort of player. Mason Graham,
my guy Falcon in the building.
But anyway, so Travis Hunter, right? Travis Hunter's the two-way sort of guy.
Yeah.
It's really important what you just said, and this is like, I'm curious if you feel differently, because we haven't talked about this. But Travis Hunter, if you're drafting him as a wide receiver, is not a top 3 wide receiver in the class. He's not, right? I
would have him top 3, but go.
I would have McMillan, Luther Burden, and Emeka Egbuka over him as a receiver prospect. If you're drafting him as a corner, he's probably the best corner in the draft, right? Like
him and Will Johnson are
him and Will Johnson are very close. But yes, I think the thing that separates Travis Hunter, and we don't even have him listed as a receiver, because I think corner is his future.
I have him at corner. Yep.
Right. But it's the two-way stuff. It's the football player stuff that separates Travis Hunter. But yeah, that's all I really had to say about that. My
guy Falcon, the resident Michigan fan, says Will Johnson. No shot Hunter is better than Will Johnson.
Will Johnson is special.
He's a dog. He's a dog. Special. And we're going to get into that on the cornerback episode. So stay tuned, guys. If this is your first time tuning into the GRYD Network, I know that I put it on my channel as well to hopefully bring some people in. Please do go subscribe to the GRYD Network page. We have a lot of stuff over there happening, excluding this show. We're going to try to make this probably bi-weekly, but we will see, just giving us some time to get things rolling and get more player profiles and stuff like that together. But super excited. Me and Mike have been talking about this for a long time, so it's just one of those things, man. We get into the groove of doing this, and then we're like hooked, and we're watching prospects. Maybe we go to a weekly show, who knows? But please do go subscribe to the GRYD Network and follow both of us on Twitter, X, whatever you want to call it. Go ahead, Mike.
Yeah, no, but listen, if we're going back to Tet McMillan, the thing is with him is that you're drafting him for his hands, for his route running ability. That's what you're drafting him for. The speed, he's not a burner. He's a guy that's just going to win the football. He's a guy that's going to win the football. So, period. He's clear number 1 in the class. I have no reservations about him whatsoever.
Absolutely. I see that you got Isaiah Bond here up at number 4 for you. I would like to discuss him next. Isaiah Bond. I don't have any of the Texas film just yet. My guy hasn't gotten back with Texas film for him yet, so I am going to go back to the Alabama film with him, and we're going to see a pretty decent game for Isaiah Bond. I think that his main thing with me was the quarterback play. There's like this bomb, great ball, but he's wide open. The ones that you have to have the touch on, Milroe was not good enough for Isaiah Bond, and I think that Quinn Ewers, even to an extent, and I know that Isaiah Bond has dealt with some injuries this year for Texas. I think that quarterback play has really held this prospect back. I'm wondering what you think.
Yeah, well, when we talk about quarterbacks at some point, you're going to hear my thoughts on Jalen Milroe and how skeptical I am with him as an NFL prospect. But again, we'll save that for another day. But Here's the thing. As we start talking about prospects more and more, I think people are going to understand that I am such a huge fan of guys with speed, right? Isaiah Bond is going to run a sub 4.340. That dude is so fast, right? So I'm one of those guys that likes to break football down in a very simple way, right? EJ's a much smarter football guy than I am, so whatever. But I'm one of those guys that likes to look at guys like Isaiah Bond, and I simplify the game as just, okay, find a way to get Isaiah Bond the football in open space and let him go. Because yards after the catch, Isaiah Bond is one of the best in the draft, right? You give this guy space in the open field, right? Set him out on a bubble screen. He's going to make people miss. He's so elusive. So I think that there's something to go with that. He's a solid route runner, not a great route runner. He's a solid route runner in my eyes. The problem that I have with Isaiah Bond, and it's actually kind of a perfect segue unintentionally, right? Or maybe it is intentional for EJ's purposes because EJ's smart. But
go ahead.
The problem that I have with Isaiah Bond primarily is that Isaiah Bond has almost the exact opposite problem of Ted McMillan, right? Ted McMillan has great hands and an unbelievable catch radius, great at fighting for 50-50 balls, but he doesn't have great speed. Isaiah Bond has the opposite problem. He has phenomenal speed, but his catch radius is a little small. He's not the most physical receiver out there, so he's not going to win a lot of 50-50s. So this is one of those guys where, you know, EJ and I were talking about this before the show, and he was saying that he's a very scheme specific player. I agree. You have to figure out a way to get this guy, like I said, get him the ball in open space and let him work yards after the catch, right? There's going to be times where he gets beat at the line of scrimmage. There's going to be times where he fails to create separation as a route runner. Get him the ball in open space, and none of that matters. So, yeah, am I a little high on Isaiah Bond? Yeah, probably. But listen, I'm a guy where I live for speed in wide receivers. I live for it, and Isaiah Bond has that.
Yeah, let me break down some of my strengths on Isaiah Bond if I can scroll down here and find him. I think he's under Tez Johnson. Yep. Smooth stride, quick acceleration, impressive deceleration. I think that's a undernoted aspect or ability of people's game is how much can they stop on a dime and de-accelerate and exactly. He's really good at that. Great top end speed that pops on tape instantly. That's probably the first thing you notice about him as a prospect. He has that elite speed. I said possesses strong route tree and knowledge and know how to create separation at the stem of the route. Solid. I didn't want to say that he's great at that or anything like that. I think that he's just he's solid. You know,
he's good. He's a good route runner. He's not a great route runner.
Works mostly off of free releases. This is where I get scared as a analyst and a scout. Is most of the time whenever you're watching him on film, he's working off those free releases. So I absolutely, that's like my worst thing when I see a small wide receiver that has a lot of speed, because one, the college game has those wide hashes. How the hashes work, if you don't watch football a lot, right here on this play, whichever side the last play went to is that widest hash is where you're starting the next play off. So you can use that to your advantage. You can isolate one-on-one wide receivers all the way on the other side. That's a good thing because you have a lot of space out there if you can get one-on-one. Yep. So when I see a small guy who works off of a lot of bunch formations, free releases, stuff like that, he's not going to have that same luxury in the NFL. The hashes are condensed, which means that the field is a lot more even. You can't isolate one guy as much. And I see him as a slot only guy. I think that he can work out of the Z packages, but it's mostly going to be out of those bunch formations where he does have the ability to work out of those free releases and whatnot. Said that he can win short, intermediate, deep through multiple ways: curls, sevens, the shallow slash deep crosses, slants, post, etc. Good timing, can bait some DBs at the stem with a simple peek and breaks. The rocker steps, etc. Shows the ability to be used all over the field, whether it's in the slot, out wide as the Z. Obviously, you don't. If it's a heavy press man team at the NFL level, I don't think you're going to be using him out wide. But just for what I saw on film, he has that ability to be used in the sweeps and even in the backfield sometimes. I said he has special teams value, punt, kick return value. I think that's instant.
Yeah.
It can happen at the next level right away. Good ball tracking ability on those deep routes. A lot of the time when he was catching the deep balls, they were wide open though, and then that's more scheme versus him actually getting off of the release and bridging at the break and setting DBs up more. So I said just not he's not going to be a plus in the blocking game at all. Can let balls into his pads sometimes. Lacks the high level production, at the NCAA ranks. I don't think that he's eclipsed 1,000 yards at all during his entire college career.
He only had about 500 or so yards.
Yeah,
at Texas.
And I did know. I think that's more about the QB play.
Yeah.
At both Texas and Alabama, in my opinion, I don't think that Quinn Ewers is quite as accurate or really as good as a lot of people want to say he is. Frame and overall size worries the heck out of me. He's like 160 pounds. Like I've fallen in love with these guys in the past, and I try to correct whenever I see something that continues to happen. My guy Tank Dell was a monster. I think that he has the same ability to get open and catch balls, but Tank Dell has been injured now again, and it's like he had that great rookie season, but then it got shortened at the end because of that injury. Now he comes back, he gets injured again. He's probably going to be rehabbing exactly, and so those things happen. Really, the only skinny wide receiver that has proven that he can do it at a high level is a 6'6'1" Devontae Smith. And since before that, it was really Marvin Harrison Sr., so those skinny guys are far and few between that can really take the pounding at the next level. So I'm worried about him. Supposedly, he can run 4.2, and that'd be electric. That would boost his draft stock. But Xavier Worthy, I thought was a much more refined route runner, had better production at the college level, had so much better yards after the catch potential, can be used in more ways, and he was just as skinny but bigger, I think taller a little bit too, and I think that he was better in contested catch. So Xavier Worthy is the better prospect of those two. He reminds me of Xavier Worthy, and I liked Xavier Worthy a lot. I had a second round grade on him, and he got, nipped by the Chiefs at the back of the end of the first round. So I don't see Bond as a first round guy. I have him as a 2-3 on my board. But I understand, you get him in the right system. You get him in the Sean McVay system where Kupp and Nakua can work outside. And I know they've got Whittington who kind of came on for them as well, and they've got some other guys, but you add him to that offense, then you start to talk about, hey, Isaiah Bond was drafted way later than he should have been. That's the difference between him going to the Rams or him going to the Raiders. You know what I mean? So it's dependent upon the quarterback play, in my opinion. Right. And I, as a Cowboys fan, I would hate the pick to pair him with CeeDee Lamb. I just think that Lamb works so well as that gadget guy where he can work outside as the X, the Z, the slot, whereas that really hinders Lamb with having him on the field, as he's probably only going to be in the slot.
Well, I mean, if you're drafting Isaiah Bond, if you're a team like Dallas and you're drafting Isaiah Bond where you're going to be in the first round, like between the low to mid teens, then yeah, that's a big time reach. I think Isaiah Bond's a second round prospect, right? Yeah. Early to mid second rounder. That's really how I see him. But listen, everything you're saying is 100% right? Like the big worry for me with him mostly is, like you said, he's got a really thin frame, and a lot of the comparisons that you can make about guys with really thin frames, they all really kind of had one thing in common, and they were exceptional route runners, right? Devontae Smith was an exceptional route runner. You brought up again Marvin Harrison Sr., who's one of the best route runners of all time. You're bringing up guys that are just so good at this, and Isaiah Bond doesn't really have that elite trait.
That level,
solid, right? He's solid. He knows the route tree. He understands what routes he needs to do. He has the ability to make sharp cuts, but he's not refined in actually running the route, right? So there is that part of it.
Well, this is another thing about wide receivers that I always look at, is you can run the route, but are you running the route with purpose? And it means, basically what that means is, if you're going to run a 7 route, you want to make it, especially if the DB has safety help to the middle, you want to make it look like you're running that post right up into it and cutting it inside when you're really going outside corner on that. You know what I mean? So you want to make it look like a different route, set the DBs up. And that's where at the point of the release, the stem of your route has to have those little nuanced things to really get open. And I don't see that as much with Isaiah Bond. And it's not that he can't do it. I just don't think that they really ask him to run those detailed routes because of what Texas's offense is. And quite frankly, Alabama's offense was with Jalen Milroe.
Right. No,
Let's go to your. I think you had number third. Let me pull your.
Yeah, if we're looking at Egbuka, yeah, he's number 3 for me.
Let's look at Egbuka. Go ahead and start it off, and I'll follow you up.
Yeah, listen, he's a really solid, like kind of crafty receiver, right? Like he's one of those players that I think he's the last first round receiver that I have. He's like I said, he's my number 3 wide receiver. I think he's going to be taken somewhere towards the back end of the first round. He's a really solid player. I see him much more as a possession receiver, short intermediate routes. I think that's going to be his strength. Good, great hands. Really kind of understands like spatial awareness. He works really well against zone coverage. The issue that I have really with Egbuka, because why not tear him down when I only throw a couple of positives at him? But he kind of has a similar problem to Isaiah Bond, right? His catch radius isn't great. He's had some injury issues. Is he going to get out physical? He's a similar prospect in that respect, but I think he's a more refined route runner. He's a solid player overall. He played for a much more refined program, obviously, in recent years. I mean, to me, he's a good player. I think he's going to turn out to be a pretty solid possession receiver. He's got some really good speed. So, again, he's not like, I don't see him as like a super high upside kind of player, but I do see him as a really refined route runner who's going to probably, I would make a bet that he's one of the safer wide receivers that you can take in the draft.
Yeah, that's one thing that I had noted on him. Before I forget this, I was thinking of all the wide receivers at the top who I would really like the Cowboys to get, and I was like, man, they probably aren't going to get Tet. Burden is probably that next guy that they have in the range. I'm questioning if whether or not Egbuka is the best fit for the Cowboys because he's been the natural number 2, the sidekick, basically his entire career at Ohio State. So, I mean, you're looking at Marvin Harrison Jr., you're looking at Jeremiah Smith now, you're looking at all those great Ohio State receivers that have been through there while he's been there. And really the only year that he's popped off was like 2 years ago where he had 1,000 yards. And I wonder if you're getting a guy who's not going to have that same ego as some of these other guys that think that they're going to come in and be the alpha in your wide receiver room. And I think that he's one of those guys that's just a solid floor. And let me restart this while I talk all my strength on him. Natural catcher of the football, looks smooth catching on the run, shows the ability to make the right move to spring for yards after the catch. Has a more extensive route tree than most college receivers. That's pretty indicative of that Ohio State offense in general, and most of the wide receivers that come out of there, they're just a lot more refined as far as their route tree goes. Can be utilized as a runner out of the backfield. You see that a little bit during this film. Nice vision to follow blocks. He's patient as a runner, which I think is undervalued at the wide receiver position. Willing, good, feisty run blocker. Not great, but feisty. He's serviceable. Shows the ability to catch outstretched balls that are behind him. He's not going to climb the ladder and get those ones way up high, but he has good adjustments as far as catching balls that are behind him and whatnot. I said has great IQ and stick awareness, which means that if he's running a curl, he's going to get 2 yards past the stick. So when he comes back off that break, off that curl, he's going to pick up the first down and not get short like some wide receivers do. And he works well with scrambling quarterbacks. He has that knowledge and that IQ to understand, hey, if my quarterback's running out this way, I don't want to run this way and have him throw cross body. I need to change lanes and go the other way. I said OSU has a concerted effort to try to get him free releases. I hate seeing that from such a program that is puts out these wide receiver products that are so crafty. I would love to see him get more press coverage and actually beat it, but it's not a question of if he can do it. I just wish I saw it a little bit more.
Yeah.
Needs to improve in the contested catch situations. I said that. Breakout season in 2022, but Cinch has dealt with the injuries and whatnot. Solid size. I just don't see him having as much strength downfield as he needs to. That hand fighting physical DBs downfield can push him boundary and allow the throwing lanes to get squeezed. Which I didn't like. But other than that, I mean, he's a super good floor prospect. I just don't know that his ceiling is quite as high as some of these other guys. And for that reason, I'm just kidding. Shark Tank on there. No, he's solid. A trade back scenario for the Cowboys, I feel would be perfect in that 20 range. I feel would be good for him. But overall, I don't have a first round grade on him. I have like a 1-2, so kind of a cheater grade. But solid prospect.
No, that's what he is, right? I think he's a high floor. I don't want to say low ceiling, but he's a moderate ceiling kind of prospect. He's very physical, right? Like one thing that you can tell about Emeka Egbuka is that the effort for me, I've never seen him go a day without effort. I mean, this is a kid that genuinely cares about being successful in the NFL or at the college level, I should say. So listen, and he has solid traits. Right.
Yeah.
So I think he contributes right away. He'll figure out his own way in the NFL. He's not special as somebody like Ted McMillan, but he's a really solid receiver. There are going to be days in the NFL where he's going to pull down 11, 12 catches just because he catches fire one day.
And I think that he's cut from that same JSN kind of a cloth. Right. I think JSN was better as a route runner than him, pure route runner. But they have that IQ and that knowledge to sit in those soft spots in the zone and just be one of those guys that's going to catch a lot of balls and be safe. They're going to control it. They're going to secure it. And, solid prospect. Like I said, it's not about always trying to hit the home run in the NFL. You need those guys that once you've built a good enough roster, you can trust your personnel and your scouting department to go and find a better player. That doesn't mean that you always have to upgrade tenfold. You can upgrade fivefold and still be in a good situation to make a run in the playoffs. So that's kind of where I see him. Trey Harris is your number 6 wide receiver. I'm kind of glad that we see him similarly because he is, for me, overrated to an extent. And it's not that I don't like him. I just think that his production is seriously inflated against bad teams. But go ahead and give your analysis on the player, and then I'll give all of my strengths and weaknesses.
Yeah, I'm giving Trey Harris a little bit of the benefit of the doubt, I think, because Trey Harris and Ted McMillan are similar in a couple of different ways, right? Both have really solid size. They both don't have elite speed. I actually think Trey Harris is a little slower than Ted McMillan is, but Harris
he supposedly runs at 4.40, and I just don't see it on film. Quite frankly,
I think he's a 4.5 kind of.
Yeah, receiver. He looks slow right there. Is that just me?
But that's the thing is I think Trey Harris is going to be a high 4.4, 4.5 kind of receiver. I think he could test in the mid 4.5s. But the reality is for him is that we gush over Ted McMillan over his ball tracking, right? And the way that he is with his hands, the fact that he makes catches look easy. Trey Harris is not the same kind of player, right? Trey Harris is not the same sort of route runner. He's not the same sort of yards after catch kind of player.
Mm-hmm.
He doesn't have the elite speed to break away from anybody. What Trey Harris does have, though, is he's got great size. He has great length, right? His catch radius
6'3", 210.
Yeah, his catch radius is out of this world. He's a good deep threat. If he wins off the line, he's a good deep threat, right? So he's my number 6 wide receiver. I'm giving him the benefit of the doubt. He's just, I'm hesitant again, for the same reason that I'm a little higher on Isaiah Bond, I'm a little bit lower on Trey Harris just because he doesn't have the elite speed and he
Yeah.
doesn't have the elite traits to really back up not having elite speed, if that makes any sense. So
Hmm.
I'm a little softer right now on Trey Harris than I think most people. I mean, I've seen people have him above Emeka Egbuka. I just don't see how that's
Yeah.
possible. I just I don't. I've seen lists like that, and I don't get it. So I think Trey Harris is, you know, he's probably a third round kind of player for me. You
Yeah.
know, but
I
I
have him
think I'm
late
gonna go
second,
like that.
early third.
Yeah,
That's where I would feel comfortable taking him. Let me bust into some of my strengths on him. Shows consistent hands that are smooth, catching the ball in different positions. I
yeah,
think that's pretty evident on tape. He's a very good catcher of the football. I don't think that he deals with the concentration drops, none of that stuff.
right.
Shows 3 years of consistent production for two separate programs, Ole Miss and Louisiana Tech. That can't be understated. If you're producing, regardless of what I think about you as a player, you're producing, and especially in the SEC against some of those DBs there, that speaks for itself. Now, I will say, like I mentioned earlier, he does beat up on some bad teams. Like he goes for 230 yards on some bad teams. I said great red zone threat, nice catch radius, and he can win jump balls. I think that's his floor at the NFL is being used in that kind of Des Bryant role. Good tracking ability to fill on the deep balls, allowing him to slow down or speed up when needed. Doesn't flash his hands too early to tip off DBs. The toughness is evident. He's willing to get absolutely hammered in the middle of the field to secure balls. I don't question his toughness as far as catching balls. I do have a problem with poor blocking. Like if you're not even gonna like, what are you doing? That's your man, your assignment to block there. You just let him freely run to the running back and get almost a tackle for loss right there. Does meet the ball or doesn't meet the ball when receiving screens. He just waits on it. I hate that's one of my pet peeves. If you're going to get screens thrown to you, do not wait on the ball to get to you. Move into the ball, catch it with your hands, and go. That gets your momentum moving, allowing you to get up to speed quicker. And it also doesn't allow a DB to fly past your face and get a pick six. I said needs to refine and polish his route running technique. I
Yeah.
just don't think that he's snappy at the breaks. I don't think that he's particularly well in the release game. I just it's so
I just think like his footwork is a little weak, right?
yeah.
Like he's not quick off the line. He doesn't really have that
And
great. Like he doesn't really explode off the line,
mhm.
and so he gets beat. You know what I mean? Like he
Look,
missed.
see how he just waits on that?
Right, he doesn't even break out of his stance. Like
Exactly.
that's the crazy part is he doesn't even he doesn't square up to the football at all, right?
He has just a funky looking stride to me. I don't know, like this, like goodness, can you find any more room in a college game? Like he had all the room in the world.
Mhm.
He's physical. He's tough. He's gonna get some. He's gonna catch some balls he shouldn't. He reminds me a lot of Keon Coleman in respects of not a guy that creates separation, not a guy that is going to win by his routes, but you throw it up to him and you have that trust that he can come down with it. That's
Yeah.
kind of how I feel about Trey Harris.
You know, it's
Um,
interesting that we're talking about Trey Harris this you know in this kind of fashion because I there were a lot of and I think some of the plus side with him is that a lot of the same things were being said about another receiver who went to Ole Miss, and that was AJ Brown, right?
mhm.
Like it was a lot of the same things being said, right? It was effort, it was speed, it was all of these different things, complacency, whatever it was. And DK Metcalf was standing on the other side as this physical, like
Monster, yeah.
specimen of a human being who was, guy looked like the Terminator and ran a 4.3. Like
Yeah.
you just had no idea, like this physical beast. And AJ Brown's the better NFL wide receiver. So, like,
Yeah.
there is like I want to kind of I want to kind of say this, right? Trey Harris has some traits that are not attractive to NFL scouts, right?
Yeah.
They're not attractive to NFL scouts, right? Especially when it comes to complacency in the play where that you're not in, right? But the reality is that like if this guy does get a good break off the line, there's a really solid chance that he's open just because he's bigger than the DB, right?
Yeah.
He'll go and
He
high
does.
post
He
football.
crosses face very well. I will admit that.
Right.
He's going to box out the DB and not allow them to work through his body. That is one of his best traits, in my opinion.
100%. And you're talking about a guy that when you're within 10 yards of the end zone, right? Forget about just being a red zone threat, but like if you're at the 5 to 10 yard line, you can almost like, you want to talk about like a fade threat. Trey Harris, a fade threat. Like he's a guy that's going to be a matchup nightmare in the red zone. He is, because at that point, you don't need speed. At that point, you don't need crazy route running. It's go get the football at that point. Trey Harris can do that, right? But it's the lack of speed. It's the lack of refinement as a route runner and the occasional lapse in effort that really kind of bog it down for me. But he's a solid NFL prospect. You're just going to have to take a gamble on him and really kind of bank on your coaching staff being able to mold all of that, all of this skill out of those physical traits and seeing if you can turn it into a productive receiver.
Yeah. And a lot of the tiebreakers that I have with my rankings and stuff like that comes down to shelf life. You're a guy that's not the fastest. You're a guy that doesn't have the best effort all the time. Like, I come from the Cowboys fandom where I saw Dez Bryant, super dominant. He gets his contract and plays another good 2 years, but then he's riddled with injuries. He loses the speed. He really loses his effectiveness to be one of the dominant receivers in the NFL.
Right, yeah.
I come from Ezekiel Elliott, who gets his contract another year, too. He never had that breakaway speed where it was, off the charts and he fell off. So when you don't have those elite traits, you have to be special getting open and separating as a football player. I don't see that with Trey Harris. So, and on top of that, he's already 23 years old on draft night. So you're talking about an older prospect, a guy that doesn't already create separation, doesn't always have the most elite traits. I err on caution with those things because I've seen it happen and bite my team in the past. So that's why I have the 2-3 grade on Trey Harris. And I personally don't understand. First round hype is crazy to me. Early second round, I can see. But man, you got to tell me that you're pairing him up with a win now team.
He's a late second, early third round pick for me, and maybe not even early third. He hovers somewhere around the late second to mid third round for me is where I would feel safe in taking him.
Let's jump over to Xavier Restrepo, however you say his last name.
Yeah, Xavier Restrepo.
Restrepo. From Miami, more of a slot receiver, but this is a guy that gets open, man. Go ahead and break him down a little bit.
I mean, listen, the production is well documented, right? He's the all-time leading receiver in Miami history. He is the best wide receiver that the University of Miami has ever had, right? So the guy's got over 2,800 receiving yards at Miami. The guy's ridiculous. He's so good. But when it comes to like traits and displayable traits, he's just a really traditional slot receiver, right? Reliable pass catcher. He's got good hands. He can track the ball. He's a veteran guy. He's been around for a long time.
Yeah.
Right. He's really good yards after the catch. He's really smart, effort and technique. He's really, really solid in that respect. Obviously the thing is that he isn't super athletic. He isn't super fast, right? He's not all that big, which is something, right? He's only 5'10", and he runs about a mid 4.4. Probably.
Unofficial numbers right now is 5'10", 198, and they have him at a 4.4 unofficial. I have him on tape as looking like more like a 4.5 guy.
Yeah, I would bet that he's probably a mid 4.4 to late 4.4 kind of guy when he officially tests and prepares and everything like that. But the thing that you're getting with him is that he is, at least in my mind, he's almost pure possession, security blanket, 8 catches a game at full strength kind of player, right? He isn't explosive plays. He's a guy that's going to be, 3rd and 7. He's the guy that takes the hit over the middle that,
he's cut from that same kind of Hunter Renfrow cloth, in my opinion.
Right. No, 100%. Right. So again, just like it's a lot of like the smaller things.
Boom. Right. And this is what I'm talking about with moving back to the ball. Look at him off the break. The DB the DB clicks and breaks on this ball. This is an interception if Restrepo doesn't go back down and grab that.
Yeah, right, exactly. Well, and that's the thing. He's reactive. He has a good head on his shoulders,
Yep.
right? And one of the things that impresses me about him, and I'm sure you're going to bring it up as well when you break him down, exceptional body control. This guy knows how to contort to the ball, adjust his feet, adjust to the positioning of the football on any given play. That's what I like. I don't see him as that much of a big time deep threat in the NFL, but I do see him as a very solid possession receiver, short and intermediate routes. I think he's going to have a lot of success at the NFL level. Again, a lot of this is also given scheme and everything like that, whatever coaches he falls under, whatever. But Xavier Restrepo, I think, has that kind of, he was able to produce at among the highest levels you can at the college level. You know what I mean?
What's funny is he was dominant in college as far as receiving goes. He was even more dominant in high school. He has over 3,000 high school receiving yards and 2,500 rushing yards in high school.
Yeah.
Dude was a jack of all trades in high school. Crazy. 2 straight seasons of 1,000+ yards receiving, 70+ receptions for him as well over the past 2 years, and then pair that with the 17 touchdowns over the past 2 years. He's just a guy that produces. As far as strengths go, excellent at sitting in the soft spots and zone coverages, shows solid route tree inside the short to intermediate zones. I didn't love him in the deep aspect of the game. Seemed like more of a product of him lagging back or just sneaking behind DBs or stuff like that. Less about the play design and really what he can do as a wide receiver. Great hands, concentration, and follow through and catch balls whenever he needs to make a play. He's decent enough in yards after the catch situations. Good IQ and awareness to run and roll with scrambled quarterbacks. Great quickness and acceleration off the snap. Lacks the elite long speed, but great acceleration and off the snap. Great vision and patience as a runner in yards after the catch scenarios. Solid floor at the next level. I just saw him as a guy that you can plug into your slot position, and he's going to secure catches. He's going to be that safety blanket, like you mentioned, the Hunter Renfrow kind of aspect of his game.
Right.
Weaknesses, I said lack of size to compete on the outside at the next level. He's slot only. Willing blocker, but he just can't sustain blocks at this level, or especially at the NFL, in my opinion. He's just not going to be able to. Don't ask him to. Athletic ability has a good floor, but he's just not elite in any athletic category.
Right.
Question his ability to add good weight to his frame. He's already 198 supposedly, so I question if he can really gain any play strength because he's already at such a good weight for his frame. And I feel like if he was going to get stronger, he would already be that strong in that frame that he already has.
Right.
I questions about his ability to work off the press man coverage just because of that lack of strength overall. He's going to have to work out of those bunch formations or strictly in the slot. So I liked him. I see him as more of like a 3rd, 4th round guy, not a guy you're going to take in the 2nd round unless you really feel good about the fit in your system.
Yeah, he's a 3rd round pick. I would go as far to say the guy's a bona fide 3rd round pick in my mind.
Absolutely.
Now, again, you said something that's very important because, like, if you're a team that's in round 2, right now, preferably not early round 2, like 35th pick or anything like that. But if you're sitting there at the 52nd pick, and Xavier Restrepo is high on your board, I'm not going to crap on you for taking him in the mid or late 2nd round if you have him that high on your board. He's going to be a productive NFL player, right? He's one of those guys where, like, if it's a slight reach, okay. The guy from a production standpoint has earned the right to be a little bit
I was so excited to watch him whenever I heard about him. Somebody told me, hey, this guy, he can run routes. He's good. I was kind of going into it thinking, oh, is this like the next Ladd McConkey? I was underwhelmed from that aspect because Ladd McConkey is well worth a 1st round in my opinion.
He's not right. He's not. He's not.
But
like Jamison Crowder. That's I think the kind of player that you'd be getting. You're kind of getting not an overly athletic but really reliable security blanket kind of receiver. That's I think what Xavier Restrepo is.
Absolutely. Let's talk about Evan Stewart, and we'll break down both of these Oregon receivers because I haven't fully finished my Evan Stewart watch, but I did finish my Tez Johnson watch. So I'll more break down Tez Johnson, you more break down Evan Stewart. This is more focused on Evan Stewart right here on the film. Go ahead, Mike.
Yeah, I love the combination of speed and size, right? Like
Yes,
he's
sir.
6 foot, but he's got low 4.3 kind of speed. And this is again, Oregon had one of the more elite groups of wide receivers in the country, right? Like Evan
Mm-hmm.
Stewart and Tez Johnson are both going to get drafted.
And
Uh,
Holden, he's good too.
yeah, right, exactly. So you're talking about guys that are fighting for the football every day.
Yeah,
But he's also a guy that can be used in a lot of ways, right? He's a great route runner. Like I said, really good speed off the line. He can get out in front of a defensive back. He's got a great release package. I mean, here's the thing that I love about him the most, to be honest with you, is that, like I said, I love speed, but I love the ability to be able to make people miss when you have the ball in your hands.
mm-hmm.
That's something that I think Evan Stewart really accelerates at. Is he's just a really solid receiver when it comes to getting the ball in your hands and making people miss an open space. That's one of the
Yeah,
things that I really value in wide receivers. As far as some of the things that I think that he can improve on, he's a little bit like Jalen Royals in a sense of like there are going to be times where an NFL wide receiver is going to hit him right out of his break and he's just going to mistime his route. Like there are
yeah,
times where he's just going to be beaten off the line just pure, through like pure physicality. I think that's really like the big thing with him
yeah,
is that he doesn't like at this point in his career, and this can be coached, right? This is not something that's going to linger throughout his entire career. It doesn't have to, at least. But when it comes to like a physical wide receiver or a physical DB, there are going to be times, at least early in his career, where he's going to lose those battles, right? So it might take him a little bit to become a really, traditionally productive
mm-hmm.
NFL player. He's a bit of a project in that respect, but he's got a lot of really nice traits. I think he's my number 9 wide receiver. So again, you're looking like mid 3rd round. Like
Yeah.
Evan Stewart's a guy I would take a gamble on in that respect.
As an Oregon fan, one of the things that I see with Evan Stewart a lot is he's very streaky. If he gets going in a game, he's probably going to have a big game. Like he gets going early, he'll probably have a big game, because he understands like, oh, I can beat my dude. I got to tell Gabriel or whoever the quarterback is, yeah, feed me the ball, homie. I'll make plays there. He takes a big shot over the middle
Yes.
from the safety. That's one of the aspects of his game as well. He's a tough player, man. He will make some really good grabs and grabs when you need him the most. He's that guy that Gabriel really looked for. Over the middle, along the boundary. He's really good along the boundary, in my opinion. My thing is, I try not to overhype these Oregon receivers because I'm a fan of the Ducks. I have seen it time and time again where I think that they're better than what they are as pros, and so I taper my expectations a lot for Duck receivers. So yeah, I probably will have him around that same area that you have him at. His counterpart, Tez Johnson, the smaller kind of guy, very slight, very fast. He's more of that big play hitter. And I'll get into him a little bit, or I might as well just get into him right now since I've mentioned him. Elite speed, quickness, shiftiness in the open field, slot demon. He's just going to be just simply slot at the next level. But man, if you use him in the right offense, he will be really, really good. Feisty blocker for his size. Like he really tries to block, especially with what Oregon wants to do is they want to run to open up the pass. And so you have to be willing to block as an Oregon receiver to get on the field. Smoothness in this game, whether it's running routes or catching the football, or just taking those end arounds, consistent win in the short and intermediate parts of the field. But the deep part is where he is truly elite. Impressive body control and ability to contort and haul in catches over his shoulder along the sideline. Great ball tracking ability on the deep post and corners. Shows toughness over the middle of the field. Underwhelming size, not a player that can block at the next level effectively, regardless of how feisty he is. Slot only player, has some concentration drops sometimes. Rarely seen working on the press coverages. Like I said, 5'10", 165 pounds, just not a big guy. So these Oregon receivers, man, really it is Stewart if you want a guy that can work on the outside. If you want the guy that can work in the slot, it's that Tez Johnson, more of the slider guy, but a guy that can win very, very quickly out of the slot, number 15 right there. And you can see him. He's pretty feisty right down there at the bottom of your screen. He'll fight down there, but
Yeah.
just a littler guy. So I do like my Duck players, but man, I have to temper my expectations on them a lot.
You got the butt kick today. I
Yeah.
apologize about that. Oof.
Yeah, man, it's that was literally the worst matchup that we could have had. I think that team was looking to not only get revenge for the Oregon game and us beating them at the last moment, but they're pissed off that they lost to Michigan. So, yeah, I just, man, they came out to play. I think they're easily the favorite to win it now. Alec I Manor, is that how you said it?
Alec Io Manor.
Io Manor. Let's pull up his tape really quick.
One of my favorite players in the whole draft. This is like Alec Io Manor is like Tet McMillan light. Like this is the kind of player that he is.
There you go.
His hands are so good. It's remarkable. Like I would not be upset with any team taking a flyer in the second round on Alec Io Manor, right? Like as far as like speed is concerned, he's not a burner, right?
Mm-hmm.
He's got low 4.4, low to mid 4.4 speed, right? So he's kind of an exception to my rule when it comes to like speed kills, but 6'2", solid size for a receiver, right? He has the ability to get open. He's a precise route runner, creates separation really, really easy. He's not super fast, but he stops on a dime. He's a terrific, terrific jump and cut sort of receiver, right? Like I said, his ability to high point the football, figuring out how to win coverage matchups with the football, that's such a big thing in today's NFL, especially against guys that are physical defensive backs. He's going to be able to win those battles out of the gate. I think he's going to be a productive NFL player right out of the gate. Here's really the thing that I think people struggle with him is that he's had some fairly like inconsistent performances against like top level guys in college football. But I love his traits. I just do. I love this guy's look. The guy just looks like a physical, handsy wide receiver that's going to pull down balls that he shouldn't, right? Like he's got like really early, like Michael Gallup feel for me. Like he's just like one of those guys where you're going to watch him one day where you're going to forget about him. But
do you think that
all of a sudden he's going to pull down a catch and your eyes are going to pop out of your head? Like it's just, he's that kind of receiver.
I know the last probably good wide receiver that came out of Stanford was Michael Wilson, that plays for the Cardinals now. Do you kind of feel like he is kind of that same? I know that the Stanford in the past, I haven't watched a lot of Stanford recently, but they were heavily a run team. They wanted to be tough in the trenches. They wanted to run the ball. So you had to block on the outside. Is he kind of in that same cloth where he's going to block his butt off, his tail off, and then he's going to get his on the outside when it calls for that?
I mean, I would imagine so. I mean, listen, he's a very physical player, right? As far as like his blocking is concerned, everything that I've seen is that he's a willing blocker. He's very aggressive in that respect. Again, it depends on how he translates to the NFL level, but at the college level, he's a physical player, right? So I think he's a pure outside receiver. I think he's pure as like a split end sort of player. So I mean, I love his makeup. I love his build. I think he's just a really solid player, solid NFL prospect. I'm much higher on him than most people. He's kind of like the guy that like crazy Uncle Mike likes that nobody else does. But Alec Io Manor is my guy. I think he's the guy I'm really high on.
For sure. And I don't think that we have any tape on Savion Williams. Oh, Luther Burden, who we missed. Let's hit Luther Burden really quickly. I knew we were missing somebody that should have been up there. I was like, who are we missing? Let me pull up Luther Burden, and I have not watched Alec Io Manor. Hopefully I said that right. But
You'll be
I'm
pleased.
going.
You'll be
I'm gonna
pleased.
go.
Don't worry.
Yeah, go. I'm gonna go ahead and get to him. Oh gosh, I forgot that it wasn't on here saved. Let me pull it up really quick. Here's some behind baseball for you boys. Luther Burden out of Mizzou. Where is he at? Right there. Let's pull him up. All right. 2024 against Texas A&M. I think I what? Let me make sure which one I watched of him, because it was a pretty good game that I watched. I watched him on Boston College is what I watched him. This is what I watched. Okay. Luther Burden, and I'll start off with Luther Burden if I can.
Yeah.
Great size, or great speed, sorry, twitch, quickness, in addition to the exceptional release package. Shows really sharp concentration and pure hands. Has the ability to win against man or zone coverages. Wins in all three levels of the field. Natural playmaker that wins at the catch with his hard cuts and vision. Can be lined up in pistol, slot, out wide, doesn't matter. They use him all over the field. He's like a gadget, Debo Samuel-esque kind of a player. Special teams value if you want to use him there. If you're going to take him round one, you probably don't want to put him out there in special teams. But if he drops down, down a couple, not a couple rounds. If he drops down to the second, and you already have your wide receiver one, you might want to use him in special teams. The body control is pretty good for his size, makes some timely adjustments on the fly, and can work well along the sideline to keep his feet in bounds as well. Works well in scramble drills to find the open zone for his quarterback to hit him. Underwhelming blocker based on the two games that I watched. Needed to expand his route tree overall. I just thought that he has some tendency to round off some routes occasionally, not as sharp of cuts as I really would like to see. Lacks snappiness at the top of the route is what I said. Little small, could struggle at the next level with some physical corners. I won't say he is small because he plays bigger than what he is. I just don't see him getting off that press release as much as some of these other bigger guys. So
Yeah.
it's more of a I haven't seen it than he can't do it kind of a thing. For me, I just I had to note it, but he is like 5'11", 6 foot esque, 205 weight. So he has great weight. He's plenty big enough to show that he can do it. It's just something I didn't see a lot. Projected 4.4 speed. I saw some shades of CD Lamb as a yards after the catch player. I just think that he makes very sharp, concise cuts in the open field that spring him free. He has great vision as a ball carrier. I think that's his special trait, is his vision and his ability to get yards after the catch, which reminds me of CD Lamb every time anybody does that, because I watch so much Cowboys football. So some people have compared him to a Debo Samuel-esque. I don't think he's quite as good breaking tackles as Debo Samuel, but I think that he is still that guy that he's a playmaker. You want to get him, that 5 to 12 snaps a game where it's designed for him.
Right. Yeah. No, look, Luther Burden is he was kind of a tough grade for me. Like, I know he's good, but I really tried to like break him down by trait.
Mm-hmm.
He doesn't have elite top line speed, right?
Yeah.
Like for a guy who's 5'11", 6 foot, right?
I will say, Mike, if you watch his 2024 tape, he looks noticeably slower on his 2024 stuff than he does his 2023.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So.
Well, right. And the reality is that, like, if he's going to test in the low 4.4s, that's probably good enough. Right.
Yeah.
Like,
and he might get the coaching from whoever he's working with on the offseason. Hey, drop down to 195 so that you can burn this 40. And then whenever it's time to play, you jump back up to your play weight.
Right. But you know what the interesting thing about Luther Burden is that, like, when he beats a DB on a route, right? Like, the numbers say that he's not like a top of the line runner, but nobody seems to catch him, right? It's one of those things where, like, once he gets out on the top of a route and he beats you, he already beat you. like there's no real explaining it away. Like he just kind of
has that extra gear kind of a thing where
exactly
he knows who's tailing him.
Right, exactly. And that might change given at the NFL level, because again, DBs are are more skilled. They're generally faster, right?
Hmm.
But the reality is you know, you you know, you used a word that I think can really perfectly describe him, and that's twitchy, right?
Hmm.
He's a very twitchy. He's uber athletic, right? This guy can really move with some of the best receivers in this class, without a doubt. Really good first step. Like you said, the guy is a yards after the catch machine. He's got good hands. The thing is though, is that like he's not, you would expect for a guy his size and for his caliber to be a little bit more of a refined route runner. I think
Hmm.
he's a decent route runner, but he's not great. He's still a first round prospect for me. I would still feel comfortable taking him in the top 20. I think he's that kind of a moldable player. But
Hmm.
like I said, he's my number 2 overall wide receiver. He's a good player. But he's a tough grade because, you know, you kind of have trouble placing him. You see a lot of good physical traits, you see a lot of good tape and everything like that, but I struggle with figuring out the kind of player he's going to be.
Yeah.
Right? Like, does that make sense?
Well, I think that he really needs to get into an offense that is willing to dictate what they do. Like you hear it on Sundays a lot. This is their pre-scripted plays, right? And that
Yeah,
first and second drive, he needs to go to a place that is willing to script plays for him that fit what he does best. Because if they just expect him to go out and run routes like Brandon Ayuk or Devontae Smith, it's not going to work out well.
right. Yeah,
You've got to be willing to scheme him in manners that allow him to be worked in on pistol formations and in the backfield and those jet sweeps and those end arounds and those random plays that are just like keep the linebackers on their heels, so that when they see those ball fakes, that whenever he comes screaming across the middle, he has that room because the linebackers have seeped up and stuff like that. Just those touches that are get your guy hit a little bit. And you hear it a lot whenever somebody comes back from injury and stuff. Like they want some plays for the guy to get back that are easy plays that don't take a lot of skill to do, but it just gets their blood pumping a little bit.
yeah,
You get him into an offense that can get his blood pumping a little bit and give some swagger to him, he can take over a game.
yeah. He's really like one thing that is undeniable about him is that he's really got good hands. Like
Yeah.
th- this guy is not going to struggle with drops. Like
I mean, he
there
was a
are,
5-star recruit out of high school too. Like
yeah,
this is a good pedigree player too.
he's a good player. And the reality is too, I mean, we just saw it a couple clips ago. If you could rewind this just for like a couple of plays back,
Yep.
right, where he just had that one catch kind of fading towards the right sideline, right? You're going to see him. I wonder if this is the play. This is the play. He catches this ball.
It gets tipped and he still grabs it.
Right, exactly. He's focusing on that football after it passes through 3 different defenders, right?
Hmm.
And then when he catches the ball, he blows by 3 separate defenders again that are tailing him right there. So even if he doesn't have, this is kind of the thing that I'm talking about, is that he doesn't have top line speed, but for
Hmm.
some reason nobody catches him. Like it's amazing how, like what you said, he has like an afterburner. He has like a second gear. So it's really interesting watching this guy play because the hands are going to translate. It depends on if his route running continues to develop, and if he's able to continue that like late break speed at the end of routes. That's going to separate him from NFL defensive backs.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Well, that probably, I mean, we've been rolling for about an hour 20. I don't have the Savion Williams tape, so I think that's really the only person that we even missed out of your list, particularly. So, I think that that's a good start for the wide receivers in this draft class. If you
Yes.
guys like the content, please do like, subscribe, share the content with your friends. We are going to, I don't know, what would you want to hit next time on the show? I picked the wide receivers for the first show, so you get to pick the next group.
How do you feel about running back? How do you feel about running back?
I love it. That's where I was thinking, anyways. So
This is a deep running back class too. This is not like last year. We have some really solid running backs in this
Absolutely.
class that can be real legitimate NFL starters.
And you have talent every single round. That's what I love about this group. So if you miss on that first round, you can come back and get a second round guy. If you miss on the second round, you can get a third round guy. We saw a group of really, really good running backs in this college football playoffs get knocked out, unfortunately. So they're going to be starting to prepare for this NFL draft. Skedabu, Genty.
Ashton Genty, yeah.
We've got some dogs, man. And Hampton, he's a beast as well. So we've got some really good players that we'll talk about next show, since we're going with the running backs. If you guys have preference on what you guys will want to hear from us, please do leave a comment. And we're going to try to hit it. We're going to try to bring this film, the breakdowns, the player grades, every single thing. And then whenever we creep up to the draft, we're going to be doing mock drafts. We're going to be doing, in-depth player fits for specific teams, and if they fit schemes and all of that stuff. We're going to make this show a yearly thing that we're going to hit. We might even start doing some summer scouting. Who knows? The options are to the moon with Mike and I. We're just guys that love the draft, and as Cowboys guys, we unfortunately that's one of the things that we have to look forward to, is the draft instead of the Super Bowl. But hey man, we're grinding, we're working. So Mike, I appreciate your time on here. Do you have any closing words, my guy?
Listen, man. One thing I want to bring up too is that if there was a wide receiver that we didn't cover that you like,
yes.
Right?
We will do a wide receiver episode too, for sure.
Oh yeah, and listen, we'll do it for other positions as well, I'm sure. But if there's a receiver we didn't mention that you want us to know about, please leave the comment. Let us know what you agree with, what you disagree with. If you think that crazy Uncle Mike is in fact crazy, then let us know about that too. Listen, we love the interaction. We're excited to keep doing this. It's going to be a lot of fun. This is great.
Absolutely. And not only just you guys aren't just gonna get me and Mike. We're gonna bring on some guests. We're gonna bring on some other knowledgeable guys as well.
Oh, yeah.
And we're gonna be talking draft all the way up until that draft day. And we will probably even do a draft show. So stay tuned. Thank you guys. If you're not already subscribed to me, I'm EJ Savage. Follow my stuff for Cowboys content. If you're following any sports thing that's not the GRYD Network, what the heck are you doing? Get over there to the GRYD Network. Subscribe, like, follow. So many great sports analysts over there, Mike and I included. And with that, we'll catch you probably in 2 weeks when we come back with the running back episode. Peace.